Do you have an interest in the legacies that historical and not so historical figures leave behind? Are you curious about how to ensure family heirlooms and life lessons are passed on from generation to generation? Are you interested in developing your end of life plan to alleviate family discord and encourage generational wealth? Well, I invite you to listen to Heirloom and Legacy, a podcast that explores ancestry, heirlooms, legacy, mortality, and more. I am Angeline C. Fraser Giles, your host, and I look forward to sharing these discussions with you. Thank you for joining me today. In last week's episode, I interviewed Reggie Shuford about the discovery of his biological father and his brother. If not for Reggie's nephew taking an ancestry test at his mom's urging, this story might not have such an incredible ending or beginning. I'm so excited to end season 1 of Heirloom and Legacy with the interview I conducted of Reggie's brother Tony Greer and his father Peter Greer. If you have not listened to my interview with Reggie, I encourage you to do so, as it provides context for my discussion with his brother and father. I interviewed them separately and blended the two conversations. Tony is much more talkative than Mr. Greer, a man of few words. However, his words were nevertheless significant. I was genuinely moved that they were so open and accepting of this revelation. They provide a sense of hope for other families facing similar circumstances. Tony Greer is a father, husband, and a brother. He is a graduate of Fayetteville State University with a BS in Business Administration and is an auditor for the Environmental Protection Agency. He is married and lives in Maryland with his wife, Angela. He has a daughter who lives in Texas with her husband and son, and has twin college-age boys who play tennis for their respective schools. He is an avid reader and loves watching and playing sports, sewing, making serving boards, and spending time with his wife, grandson, and 4-year-old niece. Peter Greer is a practicing attorney in Wilmington, North Carolina. He, along with his wife, Kathy, are co-publishers of the online Greater Diversity News, GDN, that can be found at greaterdiversity.com. In 2018, GDN led the efforts to educate, organize, and mobilize Black voters by creating a Call to Colors, an initiative adopted by the NCCU National Alumni Association, the National HBCU Foundation, and other civic supporting organizations. Peter graduated with a degree in history and political science from Fayetteville State University, attended Brooklyn Law School, and opened a private practice in Wilmington, North Carolina. Throughout his life, he has been actively involved in the civil rights movement, his community, and political empowerment. He served in leadership roles with the North Carolina Black Leadership Caucus and co-founded both Partners for Economic Inclusion and the North Carolina Black Chamber of Commerce, in which he served on its initial board. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Peter Greer and Tony Greer in part 2 of Roots of My Father, A Family's Biological Truth.
I grew up in Wilmington. I left Wilmington to go to college at Fayetteville State, but prior to that, I loved growing up in Wilmington. Most of my experiences were lots of fun. I had lots of great friends and just had a typical African-American childhood. Only now can I look back and see some of the integration activities. I was bused to junior high school, and I walked a pretty lengthy trail to get to my elementary school, and that was, I had no idea what that was all about until, of course, several years later when I began to understand the deeper history of Wilmington. But I had a pretty decent childhood, played sports and hung out in the neighborhood after dark with all the rest of the kids. I actually grew up with my mom and for the most part, my stepfather, and had a very good relationship with my dad's family. I spent lots of time with them growing up and really developed a really close relationship with my paternal grandmother, which lasted until the day she died, which was actually on my birthday in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, my mom was the primary person in my life until I really got a much closer relationship with my dad, which came sometime in about during high school.
Okay. So in high school, you met a young man, another classmate, and you became friends with him and closer when he started working for your dad. Can you talk a little bit about that friendship?
Yes, I knew Reggie Schufert from high school. I actually was more familiar and interacted more with his brother, who was Ronald Schufert. I think Ronald may have been a year or two older, but I think it was through Pop Warner football. Like maybe Ronald played for a team and I played for a team. So I was definitely familiar with Ronald more so than Reggie, but I was definitely acquainted with Reggie. Reggie was one of the smarter kids in school, and I was probably somewhere in the upper middle as far as my academic prowess. So of course I was familiar with the smarter kids, and Reggie was one of them. So we whatever, I'm not sure the extent of our interaction, but when he started working for our dad, and I'm very accustomed to saying my dad up until our recent discoveries, but when he started working for our dad during the summers, I would of course be in and out of my dad's office. I'm not sure what I was doing, maybe getting coffee for everybody. I have no idea what I was doing, but I was doing something. I worked for our dad for a little bit, but not sure exactly what I was doing at that time. But I did meet Reggie, and we hit it off as friends instantly.
I grew up in a two-parent household. I have 4 brothers and sisters. I'm second oldest. My father was military Marine, and my mother was a laborer. I moved to Brooklyn, New York, and decided to pursue a legal career. I was admitted to Brooklyn Law School in 1973, graduated in 1976, took North Carolina bar in 1976, and have been practicing here in Wilmington, North Carolina since that time. I really remember how I ended up hiring him until he told me that his mother had called and asked me to give him a job one summer, and I said yes. I didn't hire him because he was Reggie. It was something that I would have done.
That you had done anyway,
yeah,
hired a young man.
Sure, I would have hired someone else had I been requested and been able. I grew up with his mother, so I knew her, and I'm sure that influenced the decision that I made to hire.
Reggie and I had been, friends on Facebook for years. I mean, from the very beginning, when I got on Facebook, I think it was probably 2008 or somewhere around there. I'm sure Reggie was probably, well, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking he was one of the earlier people I connected with because, you know, when you first get on, you look for familiar names and faces. And so we became friends on Facebook and have maintained that friendship on Facebook for all of these years. And now kid Reggie now, but through the years, and especially I think within like the last maybe 5 years, I've for some reason sought more of a friendship with him. I didn't quite understand where it came from, but there was something about him that definitely made me want to be closer friends with him. And when I look back at it now, and by the way, Reggie always kind of put me off. So when I kid him now, he feels a little, you know, he feels a little bad about it. But there was nothing to feel bad about. He was still a great friend to me, but he just didn't, you know, like he said, oh, I'll be in Wilmington in a couple of weeks. He posted that on Facebook. So I reached out to him immediately and said, hey, Reggie, I'm going to be there also. Maybe we can get a coffee or something like that. And I said, but I know you're busy. And sure enough, when we were both in Wilmington, he had to send me a message and he said, I'm sorry, Tony, I can't meet with you. You know, I have this and that to do. And I completely understood. I know he's a very busy guy. I didn't take it personally at all. But what was interesting to me was, you know, he and I didn't trash talk about sports and stuff like that. And, you know, other things that, you know, you think this is what draws me to this person. But in retrospect, after thinking through our friendship, I realized that it's his humility and integrity and his activism. And I'm really drawn to humility. I'm not the most humble person myself, but when I recognize it, it definitely draws me, especially for coming from a person like him who, you know, receives accolades for incredible things he does, like all the time.
Yes.
And one of the things I did want to mention is that one of the things I reached out for him on periodically, knowing that he and our dad, before we knew it, they were friends. And so I would reach out to Reggie and say, hey, my dad said that I've used grammar incorrectly in this situation. Isn't he wrong? And Reggie, in his
diplomatic,
very diplomatic fashion, said, Tony, yeah, well, you know, he may have said something like, well, I don't know if your dad is wrong on this one. He didn't say, Tony, you are dead wrong. Your dad is right.
Right.
So it was just interesting the times that I reached out for his friendship, and he was always there.
So when he sent you this message via Facebook, what did the message say?
It was immediate that stood out because it says something to the effect of Tony, this is really weird or something like that, but your son Trinity, I did my ancestry DNA, and your son Trinity shows up as a close relative right after my sisters. And I thought about it, and I mean, just a split second, and I'm thinking, see, this is why I've never believed in that ancestry DNA stuff. Look how ridiculous this stuff is. I don't know what in the world, how in the world could they make such a mistake like that? That's
so you thought it was a mistake.
I thought it was a huge mistake. It confirmed for me why I don't pay any attention to it.
Okay. Because you thought, what is this? How could this be? So you didn't understand at all how this could have happened, that your son Trinity was a match to Reggie, your friend.
In my mind, it wasn't true. It didn't happened like that. And not that I had any feelings one way or the other about it. I didn't even get to the feelings part of it because I just thought that it was just not true. And Reggie, kind of, sat there and let me not get the whole point of what was going on. And now when I look back at it, Reggie knew exactly what the implications were. But I had no clue. And I'm trying to figure out, well, why did Reggie say, Tony, do you realize that this means he never said that? And
he wanted you to sit with it and try to analyze it and figure out what he had figured out.
Exactly. And that never happened because I even leaned over to my wife after I said, hey, babe, I just received a message from my friend Reggie, and this is what he said. And we both chuckled about it. And I kept the matter in mind, but really, I just missed it.
So at what point did it click for you that you understood what had actually happened?
That's the really crazy part. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 days later. Oh, I know. I told Reggie, I said, well, yeah, I'm going to Houston to see my son, who's a student at Rice, and my daughter, my son-in-law, and my grandson are all also there. So I had already had a trip planned. So I told Reggie, I'll see Trinity in, a few days, and I'll ask him if it actually showed up on his DNA also. And I tell you what, I got to Rice, I got to Houston, I went straight to the school, not even thinking about this ancestry stuff. I was just excited to spend some time with my son.
Mm-hmm.
He just happened to be sitting at the table, and I said, oh, son, by the way, a friend of mine said that you showed up on this DNA. Well, let me see, pull yours up and see if his name is on there. And sure enough, it was there. Even still.
You were still in doubt. You were still skeptical about this situation.
It did not dawn on me. It wasn't until I think the very next morning when I was at my daughter's house, woke up, getting ready to log in for work. And my dad called me, which was pretty common lately because of this organization that my dad started. It's called the New Black Student Movement. And I'm thinking we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. So the call from my dad was not out of the ordinary. My dad said, hey, son. I said, Dad, how you doing? Did Reggie tell you that Trinity showed up on his ancestry DNA? And my dad, in his customary, long-winded, roundabout, going around the barn way, said, he's your brother. Of course, I'm being sarcastic, but that's what he said.
So, so you had 5 or 6 days to stew in this, to think about it. And you never made the connection that because of the fact that your son tested high on the probability that he was related to Reggie at the time, that there was a connection between you and Reggie, and subsequently a connection between you, Reggie, and your dad.
I'm going to tell you how clueless I was about it. I didn't even take the time to think through, okay, well, let's just say Trinity is a close relative of Reggie. Let's just say this ancestry DNA stuff is real. So that would mean that Reggie is probably my son's uncle, which makes Reggie, I'm telling you, it went over
your head.
It went completely over my head. Somebody could have said, well, maybe you and Reggie are cousins. I just didn't think that far because I just didn't believe in ancestry.
Okay. So your father calls you and he says, in his roundabout, long-winded way, not so much, that he's your brother.
Exactly.
Then it clicks.
It does finally click amazingly. And I'm telling you, I may not be the sharpest one in the drawer, but I'm not the dullest one either. So I'm just really surprised that it went over my head so much, but it actually did. But when he said that, you know, I know my dad. My dad is very short. I mean, it's almost like he's being charged for his words. You don't get a whole lot of words, so every word you get from him is significant. It means it's not a wasted word. So I knew clearly at that point that he's not joking about this. This is 100% true. And so I began almost instantly, trying to process the situation.
So you didn't doubt it or need any additional proof that what he was saying was in fact the truth and
Correct.
valid.
Correct. I mean, I've known Reggie well enough to know that my responsibility when he called me was to him first and foremost, and so I didn't consider a lot of other issues beyond that. I certainly knew that I would have to relate this new relationship in a way that Reggie was comfortable. But there was no hesitation to acknowledge that he was my son.
So you're there with your family and your dad calls you. Then who do you call? Or what do you do?
I had to, really think through it. Okay, what does this mean? Okay, how did this happen? I mean, I heard about storks and stuff like that, but this was clearly
Forgot the biology of how a baby is formed.
Exactly. I mean, I really had to go grassroots back at, I had to start from the beginning, but of course, I started immediately in my conversation with my dad, who was, amazingly, he was accommodating to, he has been accommodating to both of us through the whole situation. But, he was remarkably, I'm telling you, when I talked to my dad before that, you got about 5 good minutes to get in everything you want to discuss with him, because he's not a phone person. He's just not that person. Neither am I really, but so he stayed on the phone. I asked him tons of questions, some personal questions, and he said, yeah, I had an encounter with Reggie's mom back during this time, and so all kinds of thoughts are going through my head, and he patiently, addressed, gave me answers, and genuine and sincere, which I already knew he would. But it was a great conversation after that.
Sure, to the best of my knowledge, I have answered every question that Tony and Reggie have asked me in regards to this matter, and surely whatever I was asked, I answered in a forthright manner.
Your willingness to speak here with me today is something that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily want to do, because they have this fear of people judging them or thinking bad of them for what happened. But that's not how you feel. You feel like this is a story that is interesting, and that you have no reason to feel any way other than proud of the fact that you now have another son.
Well, I am proud of that, but my concern was not about how the world felt, but how Reggie felt.
I do remember that when we talked, Reggie was very calm about it. I tend to be, kind of high strung at times. I'm pretty easygoing, but I can be pretty high strung. And I was like, dude, Star News, the Wilmington Morning Star is gonna want to cover this. This is huge. This is huge in Wilmington. And I remember, of course, pointing out that the obvious, that both Reggie and our dad are two of the most prominent lawyers, in my opinion, to come out of Wilmington, but definitely two of the most known African-American lawyers in Wilmington. So I'm thinking everybody is going to want to know, this is huge news in Wilmington. Mm-hmm. And, so we had a great conversation, and both of us, of course, were expressing our surprise. Of course, Reggie had already had the benefit of time to kind of process it. But then I realized why he didn't just go and expose the implications to me when I clearly didn't get it. And I realized he had to be very careful, because he had no idea how I would react. I mean, I could have been like, hey, that's my dad. And, it could have been any
become very territorial and protective of your dad.
Exactly. And it was, from the very beginning, it was nothing like that.
So I'm surprised when you say that you didn't believe, because I was witness to Reggie posting the story initially on Facebook, and I read it, and immediately I knew I needed to speak to Reggie and ask him if he would participate in this project of mine. And because I'd known Reggie for years, I knew whatever he was saying was, the truth, the gospel, as he, was experiencing it. And then probably, I don't know, I guess it was a few months later, maybe, when you posted a video, and I think he probably reposted it. That's why I was able to see it on his Facebook page. And the level of excitement that you expressed in that video was like nothing I had seen before, with someone finding out that they have this new family member. I mean, sometimes, in situations, it's very heartening to see how families react to news of a new person in the family, a cousin, a relative of some sort, a brother or whatever. But your excitement was palpable. I was almost in tears. So it's really interesting to hear from you, coming from the disbelief to actually meeting or seeing Reggie again after all these years, and the level of excitement. So talk about that first meeting
with
Reggie after finding out the news.
Oh, right. When he came here and I did the video. Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. I mean, well, first of all, I had to tease him, because I was like, dude, I've been trying to hang out with you for a couple years, and you've been blowing me off. And finally, now this is but anyway, that's all in jest. But it was amazing. And of course, we were headed to Hampton. Reggie drove to here in Maryland from Philadelphia so that we could caravan down to Hampton, Virginia, because we had scheduled an Airbnb with our dad, and we were just meeting him there. So I suggested to Reggie to stop through here, because I knew my wife, who was beside herself about the whole thing. And actually, she scheduled the Airbnb for us. And in fact, one of the first pictures that came out of the three of us together, my wife put it together. And so she was very, very involved. In fact, she wanted to go to the Greerford's meetup. And I was like, no, you can't go. But I said, Reg, you got to come past here and stop here for a few minutes before we get on the road so you can meet her. And that's when the video starts. And he comes to the door of my building, and we embrace and start, talking. So it was beautiful for both of us.
Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful video. It was very touching. And like I said, the level of excitement that you had and your wife had was it was cool. It was cool. So that any inkling that Reggie had or you had, any apprehension, just went out the window, because it wasn't as if he was a total stranger to you. It was just because of this revelation, it became so much more.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, to be cautious and careful that, your dad's feelings and everybody else's feelings were kept intact. So since all of this has happened, what have you guys been up to?
Well, Reggie and I keep close contact. I think we've both really strongly embraced the brotherhood. I mean, both of us have brothers already. Like I have a younger brother. His name is Thomas, and he's a very, very intimate in my life. He has a daughter who is 4, and she is the love of my life. I spend tons of time with her, and so it keeps my brother and I connected. But we were very connected before then. So he's a wise young man, wise beyond his years, and so I have the benefit of talking with him about different things, and he's of course embraced Reggie as well. And like I said, Reggie has a brother, and Ronald reached out to me. We became friends on Facebook as well. And but this connection that Reggie and I made, I mean, if you have to handpick someone to be a close relative to you, you cannot pick a person better than Reggie. Now, I like to believe that no matter who reached out to me and said, Tony, we're brothers, I like to believe that I would have embraced them as strongly. But something about Reggie, because like I said, it was just something there that was like, it was like I just couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew there was something there. And we're kindred spirits. And I mean, we do have lots of things in common as we've come to know, as we've gotten to know one another over the past few months. But it has been beautiful. So we chat a lot. Like I said, we met in Hampton, where Reggie, our dad and I went to the 1619 location. We saw the marker. We took pictures by it. We're all history buffs.
We believe in social justice, and so our hearts are in the same place.
The thing that, as far as the legacy that has really stuck with me, is that in identifying the legacy and then starting from the beginning, I had to, it was very painful for me to know that, wow, there's no telling what Reggie, I mean, he's already achieved the highest of heights, but who knows where he could even be if he had that stable father figure that I had, for a lot of my years.
And I'm just happy that Reggie, Tony, and I are communicating and growing to know one another and appreciate one another. So I don't have anything more than that. I'm just happy that we are where we are.
When it came to, where's my place? Am I going to be the odd guy out? Because when I looked at the picture that my wife gave me, I was like, he looks more like Dad than I do. And so it was kind of funny, but I really thought that, but I was just really happy to share our dad with him, and even if he wanted to take more time with dad than I can get at this time or whatever, I was fine with that, because our dad did a great job in putting me in a position to raise great kids and that kind of thing. So the legacy going forth is I really have wanted our families to connect. Like when we went down for the parade, I made sure that Reggie was able to meet my dad's, two of my dad's sisters, and they were able to meet him. They were two of the ones who I spent a lot of time talking about this whole thing too when it first happened, and I wanted them to meet. And I really felt like, Reggie, if you want a crash course in your dad, Peter Greer, you got to hang out with these two ladies right here, because
they know all the dirt.
They know all the dirt. They know where all the bodies are hidden. And so the legacy is as we move along, I want my sons to get to the point, I don't know if this will ever happen, but that they can call their Uncle Reg and say, hey, what do you think about this or that? Or Reggie can call them. And so I've made sure at every opportunity that I've tried to include family meetups where I can, because I want to, he's a great guy. I mean, if all you do is just know him, you're much better for that. So that's what I was thinking.
I completely agree that he is a great guy, and just talking to you, you're a great guy too. So
well, thank you.
It's really it's wonderful meeting you guys via Zoom. And well, I've met Reggie in person, but it has been a pleasure talking to both of you. So I want to thank you again so much for sharing this story and being so vulnerable. I think because we don't hear a lot of stories like this, that people find out who a family member is, or that there was a relationship that resulted in a child, and now here we are, you guys grown adults doing well in your own lives and beating each other. So I want to thank you for sharing your story, and I can't wait for the book. As I told Reggie, I can't wait for the book that's going to turn into a movie. I'm really looking forward to it.
That would be nice.
All right. Well, thank you again, and take care and keep connecting.
We will. And thank you so much.
I think all of us are pretty much alike. We don't talk a lot on the phone and a lot of stuff like that, but we believe in a lot of the very same things.
A lot of the civil rights issues.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that seemed to be a very current theme running through all the conversations that I've had with all of you now, is that civil human rights movement building is definitely carried through that bloodline.
Well, I certainly believe that the three of us believe in it and are committed to what it is that we are doing, and happy for a chance to collaborate, and to the extent that we can do it with one another.
Wonderful. Peter, thank you again so much for agreeing to speak with me today. I truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Heirloom and Legacy. If you want to learn more about the work of Heirloom Estate and Legacy Preservation, you can find us at legacypreservation.life, on Instagram at Legacy Preservation, and on Twitter at Heirloom Legacy. Many thanks to my exceptional executive assistant, Queen Karen Garrison, aka Mommy Activist, and my outstanding engineer, Jonathan Reed. Thank you again for choosing Heirloom and Legacy. Please like, subscribe, and tell your friends about us.